shut up.
Okay, just because I'm gonna forget once we get rolling. So I'll just, when the recording is done, I will, just download it and edit it to pull out the stuff that's happening right now. So, and make it a fresh start. Hey, everybody that's just coming on, welcome. Let's make sure that we're going to get started. We're going to give it a few more minutes to let people join us. Make sure that you can hear me. I hope that you can. Okay, good. So far, so good.
Been going through so many of these. I'm like, yeah, always go mute. Wait for everyone.
Yeah, we are all going to become the most tech savvy people ever after this, whether we want to or not.
Yep.
All right, more people are joining. Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Hello.
Hi, Lonnie.
All right. I want a background like Mary.
It's virtual.
Is it virtual?
Not real. Can you tell?
That's for real? I was gonna say that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's fake.
Ooh.
That's nice. Yeah.
That's very nice.
That way you don't get to see my cluttered kitchen.
Well, oh man, I gotta figure out how to do that. That's really good.
If you go to your Zoom account and you go to the settings, you'll see a tab for virtual background.
Okay.
And they have some, and you can add your own. They have one with a beach with the palm trees waving and everything. And I did a Zoom meeting with my grandchildren a few weeks ago, and they were so excited. They said, "Grandma, you're not supposed to travel."
Man, that is cool. Well, Mary, I gotta tell you, you look so scholarly. just with that background, you look like you're one of the most brilliant people, on the planet. So I'm gonna have to find that one. Anything I can do to make myself look scholarly is gonna be all right with me. All right, people are joining us. Great. Hopefully everybody can hear. How many we got so far? I got 9. I'm gonna have to keep putting my glasses on and off just to see. Okay, we have 9 people. Excellent. I'm actually I have done this workshop for years and years now, and so I'm usually very comfortable, but it's been so long since I've been A, in front of people, and B, done anything that requires my cerebellum, that I'm actually really nervous about this particular one. So you're gonna have to bear with me. I'm gonna sound like I've never done this before. I'll pull it off, but I'm very much out of practice with anything.
Ooh, and can I say, I know this is gonna go until 8 p.m. At 7:30, I need a break. My dog has diabetes, and I gotta give her a shot.
Oh, poor thing. Sure, of course. No worries. No worries at all. We're also.
And my son may pop up in the background.
Yes, well, that is always welcome, and yeah, don't ever worry about that.
Cool.
I'm sure there'll be all sorts of things that go on in backgrounds, whether they're sounds or videos or whatever. A lot of times I'll be doing these things, and more recently when I'm doing social stuff and the kids with disabilities that are at home, or all of a sudden you'll see Hi. Mom's completely in the background going, okay, that's my son.
Yeah, the virtual background helps with that too.
Yes, for sure.
So it's 6:03. Do we want to get started? I'm Donna Cuchet with Family Empowerment, and Caroline Wink is also here with us. This workshop was going to be in Greenfield, but we are now virtual, so we're just all over. But we want to introduce Cheryl. I've known Cheryl for quite a number of years now. She's worked with a couple of different families that I have had on my caseload. And I've also had the pleasure of meeting her at conferences and listening to her presentations and, hearing her wisdom in a lot of different circumstances. So I'm happy to introduce Cheryl Ryan Chan. And she's probably going to hate me for mentioning this, or maybe not. Cheryl is one of the people who actually is the person who is responsible for getting Nikki's Law kind of in front of people and really pushed hard to get it passed. So I think that she is a go-getter and she is energetic, and I think we're lucky to have her with us this evening. So without further, Cheryl, it's yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Donna. Thank you. It is entirely my pleasure. There is somebody on chat who's already saying, let's see, I can't stay the whole time. Yes, Mayanne, this webinar will be available. I'm recording it now, and we'll provide the link. So, couple of thank you again, Donna. That was really sweet of you. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. I was just saying a couple minutes ago, I'm a little out of practice in terms of public presenting, so I'm oddly nervous about this one. But this is a presentation that I've not only done many, many times, but the subject material is really, really, really near and dear to my heart. So this is going to be exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just a couple of housekeeping things. This is a tricky one. We're expecting somewhere around 20 people, so that's great. I am going to be sharing my screen shortly, and so that you will be able to see my PowerPoint presentation. You'll still be able to hear my voice. I may stop and start the sharing of my screen back and forth a little bit, just to give you a little bit of a break from the presentation slides. But at any rate, there is a chat window that's available for Zoom, and we are monitoring that. And Donna, I'm grateful to Donna that she is going to be watching that as well, just in case there are any questions that come up that I don't happen to see. I welcome questions throughout this conversation, because we go through a lot of topics, we have a lot of different kinds of discussions, and so let's just keep the conversation going. And anytime that I'm looking, I also have my other hat on and monitoring my time so that I'm honoring your time. If I feel like we need to keep moving on so that we can get through the whole presentation, I'll just say, we can carry on a conversation if you'd like, offline afterwards. I'm always available and always happy to talk about what it's like to be person-centered, and also about person-centered planning, which is the topic of tonight's discussion. So I don't know if anybody's ever seen this presentation in the last year. I do it all over the place, so I'm not sure, but if you have, then don't give anything away. I hope you enjoy it. It always ends up being, a little bit different every time. But the essence of what I want to talk about is that which I said is most near and dear to my heart. So tonight we're going to talk about person-centered planning, because we've all heard of that, and some of us might know a little bit about it. But and it kind of comes in different forms and different varieties depending on who you're talking to about person-centered planning. I've been doing it for 9 years now. I've done it all over the country. I've presented in Maryland, all over Northern California, I've got many, many clients out there I go and see on a regular basis to do person-centered planning. I've also trained and done person-centered planning in a couple of different places in Wisconsin. And I'll shortly be heading out to New York to do some there, but not too quickly, right? So that's what I do. It's what I love doing. But the important thing for me, as I've done this over the years, is that I've realized that, you know, I could go and do all sorts of presentations anywhere and talk about just strictly person-centered planning. But being person-centered is really a far greater journey than just doing person-centered plans. And understanding the principles behind what it means to be person-centered allows us to apply those principles, not just during like a planning session or a planning experience, but throughout everything that we do to advocate on behalf of either ourselves or a person that we love. So over the years, I've adjusted this presentation to not just be about person-centered planning and the mechanics of that, which I'm going to go into tonight. But I want to start with the what's behind being person-centered and share with you what I believe are first and foremost some of the most biggest issues and the crisis that I believe is taking place in terms of both globally as a society, how we are approaching supports and helping people lead dignified lives if they have disabilities, and also right down to the systems where you know, we could go down a rabbit hole about the problems and all of that and the issues and the challenges with the way that the systems are set up, but I'm not going to do that. However, we're all well aware of those things, right? And while this workshop, I want to make sure that I make it clear that as a consumer myself, as a parent of Nikki, thank you, Donna, for bringing it up. I don't mind at all, but Nikki of Nikki's Law, as mom to Nikki, who's 27 years old, severely impacted with autism and intellectual disabilities. You know, I am also one of those consumers, and so lots and lots of experience with seeing how systems work. And there are things that work really well, and there are a lot of things that don't work well. So with that, let's start by talking about what it means to be person-centered. So this is where I'm going to start sharing my screen. Bear with me while I bring that up. The name of this presentation is Becoming Person-Centered for Families. And this quote is one that I use often. It is our duty to steward the humanity of those we love. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. That's really the crux of it, is stewarding the humanity. Because frankly, I believe that we live in a system-centered world as opposed to a person-centered world. And we'll go into this a little bit more, but basically what I'm trying to say by that is that when we're approaching how to help a person that we love or ourselves, if we're self-advocates, lead a dignified life of joy, then typically when we approach a system or become part of a system, the questions begin with what's wrong, what's missing, what's not working. And all of those things kind of are placed on the person themselves. And so being person-centered helps to, and understanding the philosophy helps us to move beyond that and look at gifts and dreams and vision from the own individual and finding the way to reach that the highest version of that we can, no matter what the systems provide. And also taking those systems and placing those in the space where they belong, which is beneath the person, beneath their humanity, beneath their spirit and their soul, and placing those services in a place where they are doing what they're meant to do, which is to serve and not to dictate. So that's kind of, again, some of what we do when we start talking about becoming person-centered. So bear with me while there we go. So one of the biggest crises that we're facing right now is one that I see and talk about all the time when I'm out there talking about being person-centered. And that is this. When we are all so focused as loved ones of people with disabilities on taking care of all of these things. Okay, we're going to all of these workshops, we're setting up all of these things, and they are the brick and mortar: housing, services, transportation, medical care, guardianship, trust, Social Security, and other benefits. Every time I do this presentation, I ask people to raise their hand if they're working on at least one of these things for their transitioning loved one. And, over and over again, almost everybody raises their hands. But what is it that we're forgetting? Well, when I ask that question, I reframe it sometimes and I'll say, what is it that's most important to you when you think of the future life for the person that you love? And so I just throw it out there, and I get answers typically from friends, to happiness, to stability, to good mental health, just a life of a happy job, a job where they're happy. And so I get a mix of responses, but among those is always, 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 I just want the person that I love to be happy and be cared for by people that they love. And so I turn back to this list and I say, okay, so we're talking about joy, we're talking about a dignified life. Among these things that we're all scrambling to take care of, where does joy and friendships and dignified lives fall into this? Which one of these things is going to answer that question? Which one of these things is going to bring that, if we're saying that that's the most important thing? And the answer is very little to none, right? I mean, you could squeeze it in there among some of these things. The brick and mortar house, sure, we want a nice house, we want the highest level of services. Those things can contribute to joy. But what I argue is that joyfulness, the humanity, and stewarding those things throughout a person's lifetime is missing from this list. And it should be at the very top of this list and continuing on as we go along and take care of these other singular things that speak to mostly safety and security of systems, services, and so on. Correct? Am I correct? So typically I'll say things like, am I correct? And I'm looking around the room and people are nodding their heads. So I'm just going to assume y'all are nodding your heads. So at any rate, that's what I see as a really big crisis. And I call it a crisis because the other thing that's happening is we're all hearing about this person-centered planning kind of thing, but it's being introduced, it's being talked about as this kind of fluffy, boutique, secondary thing that, is a little bit, is really kind of, I can't do it, and I can't do it now. I can't afford it. I don't want to think about it because it's a very, very emotional thing. And I find that very, very troubling. Out in California, the reason that I go out to California all the time now is because the state of California, a couple years ago, granted 3,000 families just in Northern California with self-determination contracts. But what they did was that they made it mandatory that families, before they get their self-determination budget, have to have, among other things, a person-centered plan done for their person. And that person-centered plan informs the conversation around system services before you even get to that list of things that you want for your person. So that has been just extraordinary. And I've found that to be something that I wish happened all over the place. We need to stop thinking about stewarding the humanity or making a person-centered plan an extra, something nice that some people can do and others can't. So let's talk about why. I am going to get to the essentials of person-centered planning in a bit. But I'm going to make this larger leap into a bigger discussion that talks more about what I've said, which is the principles of what it means to be person-centered. And circles of support is one of those essential elements of a person-centered plan. But over the years that I've been doing this with hundreds of clients, I have found that this is the single most difficult thing for all of us to wrap our heads around. And it's because it places us into a space of vulnerability and difficulty that is primarily internal, but also a product of our culture and our society. And we're going to talk about those things in just a second. But while it seems like I may be deviating a little bit from the concept of person-centered planning, I'm not. A circle of support is something that is critical to having a successful and sustainable person-centered plan. So I do a deep dive into that. Circles of support, like I say here on the slide, it's about them, not us, and we all have circles. So what do I mean by that? Again, the vast majority of the people that I work with in doing person-centered planning are people who are looking at a future transition. A lot of times it's transition age folks, so they're moving out of the educational system into the adult system, or they're moving out of the educational system and they're not going to be eligible or not seek the adult system. So they need to be gaining independence. They need to be, become part of their community. Or they're at a different part of their lives, but they are anticipating a change of some sort. So those are the people who most often come to me for person-centered planning. And what I find is really important is that I start the conversation with, let's remember that with regard to a successful person-centered plan, you must have a circle of support. I cannot do a person-centered plan with just mom, dad, and maybe the person we're talking about in the room. There needs to be a circle of support. I get a lot of pushback. I already know what a lot of people are thinking when I make this statement. I don't have anybody. And I get that. But first of all, it's not about you. It's not about mom, dad, and the caregivers. It's about the individuals. And so it's about finding those people that are in the person's life who might be willing and able to participate in their lives. Maybe with a little longevity, maybe short period of time. Either one of those is okay, but we really need to be ready.
Cheryl, Cheryl, there's really bad feedback.
Okay.
People are putting it in the chat, so I thought I'd just stop you. I don't know what's going on.
Let me try something. Any better?
No.
It's not any better. Okay. Bear with me. I'll do one more thing. Wait. This.
This is not your IEP.
Is this any better?
Yeah, that is better.
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Hear me? People can still hear me. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Then I will simply move forward.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So at any rate, circles of support. So circles of support are that essential element of person-centered plans, but that goes beyond just person-centered planning. I have to drive this home with families whenever I meet with them. It's about bringing in people who can sustain, hopefully at some point beyond us, mom and dad, as primary caregivers, as people who will be adding to stewarding the humanity, as I talked about earlier. So let me do a little bit more explaining about circles of support. If we were in the same room together, I would have you do this. So instead, I'm going to kind of explain it through. Typically, I would like you to pull out a piece of paper and map your own circles. I do that as a demonstration of helping you all understand that this is a normal kind of thing, that when we talk about circles of support, we're not just talking about, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see me. So we're not just talking about people with disabilities. This concept is not one that we should be applying just to people who need support, okay? Because the truth is, needing support is something that's a human condition. None of us can live and exist and thrive all alone, okay? So we all have circles of support. And when we do this exercise, I have people think of, so let's just do it without doing the actual the drawing and so on and so forth. So just bear with me for a second. Start thinking about the people that are in your life. This exercise involves looking at 4 different components of people, the people that are in your lives. The first one are the people that know us most intimately, those people that we live with, that we love truly, that we can't imagine living without. And so if you just think of the people in your life right now who fall into that category, and then start thinking about the people who are in your life, who are your friends, maybe extended family, who know a part of your story and you know theirs. They trust you and you can trust them. Those are people in your circle of support. The third ring of the circle of support are people who are in your life through participation or an association. So these are people that you know and you see regularly. You probably know their name or some of their names, but people that you see regularly at your place of worship, at your gym, at work, your coworkers. And so they are people that you see with regularity that really are take up space in your circle and in your life meaningfully. They may be neighbors, so on and so forth. The bus driver. And then the final, although the bus driver kind of moves into that 4th circle, and these are gray areas, they don't have to be black and white. But that 4th circle, to illustrate this concept, are people that are paid to be in our lives, okay? That circle of exchange. So when we do this exercise together face to face, I have everybody spend a few minutes filling out this diagram and putting in for themselves, not for the person that they're caring for, but for themselves, to illustrate the fact that we all have people in our lives, and that is our circle of support. So again, using kind of the principle of normalization, so to speak, I want to make sure that I can help you understand the concept of circles of support as something that we all have in our lives. So the idea, then what I typically do when we're together is I say, turn over that diagram, turn over that list of people and put it away for a second. But imagine with me if all of the people that you just named were not in your life, that they were gone, that they didn't exist. And I allow that to sink in for a minute. And then I start asking folks, how do you feel? Imagine if they weren't there anymore. How do you feel? And as you can imagine, the responses are horrible, sad, depressed, lonely, afraid, isolated, vulnerable, so on and so forth. It just kind of goes down the list of those things that we immediately start to feel if we can imagine all those people being no longer in our lives or not in our lives at all. So that's the concept of circle of support. Now, where did my glasses just go? Thank you. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I got to make sure I'm doing the right thing over here with my slides. Who's with me on the glasses thing, right? So let me tell you, right? I'm seeing a couple people going, oh yeah. So let me go on to my next slide over here. And this is what drives this concept home when it comes to applying it to the people that we love. And then I'll share it. Hold on, I gotta share it. You're looking at me still. That's an awful thing. Here we go, share. Okay. On the left, you will see the circle of support diagram. You and I might have a circle of support diagram that looks a lot like the one on the left. We have friends, we have our community, we have our teammates, our neighbors, our coworkers, our book club, our sisters, our aunts and uncles. We have our trainers, our workout buddies, the doctor, our counselor, all sorts of people in our circles of support. But if you look on the right, very, very, very often, more often than not, people with disabilities have a couple of people in that intimate circle of support, parents, siblings, so on and so forth. Nobody, then people who are paid to be in their lives. This is the reality of what circles of support look like for people with disabilities when we do not participate in the exercise of helping to grow a circle of support for them where they need that level of support. This is really, really important. Now, here's the other thing that's important for you to understand about this concept. Those of us who have these larger circles of support on the left, whether you have a lot of people in your circle of support or whether you have a few people in your circle of support, for those of us who are not challenged with disabilities, that is our choice, okay? We can decide how many people we want in our lives. We can decide that we do or don't want to have a lot of friends. We can decide that we do or don't want to go to our places to worship. We can decide that we do or don't want to go to a gym or to work in a particular place or, you know, any of those things. So we build our own circles kind of naturally as citizens. People with disabilities, all of the barriers to accessing others, the most significant one being that they rely on people to help them access others, right? All of those barriers prevent them from being able to make these kinds of choices. And so this is the result of that. It's a very, very grim picture, I think, but it does drive home what I'm talking about, which is an essential element of being person-centered. And the takeaway around this is that, again, we need to help if you go back to that list in the beginning of this presentation, all those things we're taking care of, we need to add to that list helping build a circle of support, because for people with disabilities, it has to be done intentionally. And it takes a lot of work to do, years of work to do. This is not something that you can just simply pop on and off when it's time to for me to come in and do a person-centered plan and I say you gotta, you know, invite other people. This is not something that you just turn on for that and then turn off for the rest of the time. Really, really important concept. I am going to take a sip of water right now, and I am going to make that a pause to see if there are any questions so far, or if we've lost any people. Sometimes people walk away from me and start screaming and yelling, and not really, but they might give me some nasty looks, because this is a very difficult thing to talk about. But are there any questions so far?
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
So I just keep thinking with the circle situation about the youth who are in DCF custody,
Mm-hmm.
and been removed from family,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much their whole circle is people that are paid to be in their circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I really believe that they're the ones that should have a person-centered plan, because it's looking out for them. It's not looking out for a system. It's not looking out, you know, for DCF, for DDS. It's gonna help them guide their life. And I don't know if anyone, if that's part of the conversation, and if anyone's working with those kids That's it. If anyone's worried.
Yeah. So, and that, you know, when that situation arises, whether it is because of DCF or the system situation that they're in, or simply because no matter when I bring this up, the response still is, I love your idea. It's a good thought, but we still got nobody. Then part of the person-centered planning process becomes, let's put into the plan the concept of finding ways to build that circle of support. Again, it's going to take years, and then there's sustainability. So managing those relationships. But for a person who really is kind of in a place where they're really struggling to identify people for a circle of support, that's okay. Let's start talking. Let's start with the basics of what kind of people do you want to be surrounded by? What kind of people, you know, who is it that you need in your life to help you steward your humanity? I'm going to use that term over and over again. So, you know, do you prefer in terms of caregivers and people that you can think of that you would like to be able to confide in? Some people prefer a peer or slightly older peer who's, you know, a young man or a boy might say, I would rather talk to somebody who's, you know, a young man, or somebody who's like my dad used to be, or somebody who, you know, I prefer to talk to women, right? I want somebody who is a mom too. I like to talk to people who are shy and quieter. I would like to have somebody in my life who would take me to see the trains. I would like to have somebody in my life who likes to play video games. So therein lies some of that conversation around getting to know a person's preferences and ideas of who it is that they would like to have in their lives. Because there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are going to come into their lives whether they're invited or not, right? Because that's part of the system, that's part of the care structure and all of that. But I don't see a whole lot of discussion where people are saying, well, who do you want in your life? And that's really being person-centered, right? I hope that answers a little bit of your question, Leilani, a little bit. And it's not, again, it's not about having the answers right then and there. It's not about pulling out a dozen people and saying, okay, here's the circle. It's about doing it with intention, approaching it with intention, and starting with the questions to the person or the people closest to them. Who would they prefer? Who do you think they would want in their life if they're not able to speak for themselves? I'm just looking, okay. Treehouse and E7 set of five. Okay. There's some great discussion going on in chat. Hopefully everybody will be able to see that. Yes. So Leilani is, yes. So thank you for that follow-up. Good thoughts. And the truth is, a lot of this stuff too, I don't have perfect answers for in the context of one presentation, but those are some of the things to kind of plant seeds into the mind of, you know, if we were to approach this as, you know, person-centered, in a person-centered planning context, that would be some of the discussion that we would have. And that's what it's like to be kind of person-centered. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and we're going to continue on to the next slide. Okay. So when we talk about circles of support and the concept, I'll go over this real briefly because this kind of is a good segue from what Leilani was just asking me. When approaching the concept of having to create a circle of support and doing it with intention, here are some of the elements to doing that, some of those other things that I would help a person gather. Whether, you know, and sometimes people who already have lots of people coming to their person-centered plan still want to go through this. So we chart the circle, we invite the circle together, we talk about what an invitation looks and how to do that inviting. We create an agenda of positivity and possibility. We present the person's dream, and that's a conversation within the context of person-centered planning we'll go over with in a minute. We ask for stories. These are stories from other people who have had experiences with the person, who You know, you can glean a whole lot of things from other people's stories about a person. You can learn a whole lot of things about a person from hearing other people talk about experiences that they've had with them. We describe the needs. We ask for people to think about how they can help. And we make sure that we remain vulnerable and open to hearing and open to allowing other people in our lives. So those are some of the things. So some of this is in the context of one of the other things I do for some families, either sometimes before and sometimes after person-centered plans, is I specifically come in and hone in on building that circle of support. So these are the things that come up in that discussion. And then, as it says on the slide, developing a person-centered plan is a key strategy to helping people move forward. So we're talking about what it means to be person-centered. Let's continue with that part of the conversation. One of the things that I find to be other than bringing forward and identifying and helping to build a circle of support, these are the next few slides are some of the other things that I think that we can all be doing better to be person-centered and to steward the humanity of people, the person that we love or ourselves. And so the first way is to change the way that we speak. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that the reason that I think this is important is because by going through this and learning to practice this on a regular basis, it shifts our own way of thinking and models the person-centered approach to others. So when you're in a team meeting, when you're in an IEP meeting, when you're talking about, or an ISP meeting, when you're talking about the person that you love, I think what we often do is we think that going into a meeting and being able to speak the jargon, and which I call system speak, and kind of become part of that team, that systems team and the clinical team, and use those references when we're talking about the person that we love, that somehow that will bring us more credibility to the conversation, because it's very intimidating to go into these team meetings, right? And no matter where we are, I'm still intimidated, and I've been doing this with Nikki for 25 years. Walking into a room with a whole bunch of people who are clinical, professional, trained people who are supporting my son, and it can be intimidating all of the time. And so we think that if we adopt all of this stuff and we start talking about the function, I'll use myself an example. If I start talking about the function of my individual's behavior, and references to being able to find benchmarks within the goals, and agreeing and bringing up the idea of 80% of success is a benchmark that we need to be achieving, and autism this and intellectual disabilities that, and really trying to keep up with that language. First of all, I end up sounding like a fool because I don't know what I'm talking about. But second of all, my role in that team situation is to steward Nikki's humanity, to make sure that I'm talking about Nikki as a person, as a citizen, Nikki who has gifts, who has dreams and desires. This is what he likes and this is what he doesn't like. Not preferences, what he likes, okay? It's not a preference. It's not, a reinforcer. It's simply what he likes, okay? Period. I talk about his happiness and that this would make him very happy. This will bring him joy. This will not bring him joy, and this will become a source of anxiety or frustration for him. I talk about the things that are important to him. And on this slide, I put under important to. The word to is all in capitals, and there's a reason for that. There's a difference between things that are important to a person and things that are important for a person. So when I talk about this, I use the example of Nikki once again. Poor Nikki, he's probably like, Mom, enough talking about me, but too bad. he's my best example. So if Nikki were in the room and I said to him, Nikki, what's important to you? And if he were able to communicate and speak, he would probably say, well, it's important to me that I have the food that I like, that I get to live in the house that I'm living in now because I love my house, because I have my own space. It's important to me that I have my computer and that Wi-Fi never, never, never goes down. It's important to me that on my computer, I get my YouTube videos of Disney princess and Disney villains videos, all I want. It's important to me that I get to pick out the food and that I have the food that I like. And it's important to me that I have red tie-dyed t-shirts, okay? Those are the things that are important to Nikki. Nikki is not going to say that my ISP has been signed on time, that there is a functional behavioral assessment for all of my behaviors, that my helmet protocol has been updated on a regular basis, that, I don't know, you know, and go on and on about all of these things. Those are the things that are important for Nikki. I know it, the team knows it, those who care for him know it. Those are important for, okay? But the things that are important to Nikki are an entirely different list. So when we're changing the way we speak, when we're talking about the people that we love, stewarding the humanity, being person-centered, is that right side, is on the right side of this diagram. It's using the language that speaks to the person and who they are at all times as much as possible. Okay, let me keep going. Changing our perspective as we change our language. I love this diagram. I've used it for many, many years. And I keep forgetting to do this. I say this every damn time I do this presentation. I got to change it up a little bit. Never has happened, so whatever. Here it is. If you look at the column that says rehabilitation view and independent living view, that it's more like, in the context of what we're talking about, it's more like the systems view on the left versus the person-centered view on the right. Same kind of stuff, but at any rate. Terms for defining the problem, and this is in the systems view, which is where honestly we are right now as a society. Defining the problem is in the impairment and the skill deficiency. That's where conversations start typically when we go in and we're talking about helping our person have a life, okay? The person-centered view of defining the problem is dependence on professionals, relatives, and others who take control of our lives, okay? Where is the problem located? The systems view is that the problem is located in the person. And in the person-centered universe, the problem is actually located in the environment and the way services do their work, okay? What is the solution? Systems view says professional intervention. We must have the right professionals. We must have the right clinicians. We must have a BCBA. Versus the solution to helping people reach the greatest version of themselves and to stewarding humanity is the removal of barriers, advocacy, consumer control, and self-advocacy. Who is the person? Patient, client. Right now, the word of choice is individual, right? Versus a person, a citizen. I love the word citizen because it reminds it, because again, we are all citizens, okay? Every single one of us is citizens. We are now applying the same language to the person that we love as we are to ourselves, because we're not all patients, we're not all clients, we're not all cases. That is not person-centered. Citizens who have rights, right? Because that's also kind of understood and underlying in the concept of citizenry, citizenship. Who's in charge? Love this one, the professional versus the citizen. In a person-centered world and in person-centered planning, the citizen is in charge, and we'll talk about that more in a second. Finally, what defines results? This is my favorite. Maximum possible individual functioning as judged by professionals. So how many times have we heard, I go back to the example I used a minute ago, what is it? I'm a little older than the IEP process. So I remember, here's the results. That success means 80% of the time they do what we decide is the right thing across 20 opportunities. Something, 100% of the time, blah, 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 blah. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? We've all been there. That's how the systems view defines a person's success. In a person-centered world and person-centered approaches and in person-centered principles, success is defined by the ability of a person to be in control of their life, regardless of how much assistance they need to do so. Okay? So again, changing our language, changing our perspective. These are a couple of the other ways that we can begin to start being more person-centered in the things that we're doing. Taking another sip of water. Are there any questions? I cannot see the chat thing right now. So Donna, are there any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. All right, then we'll move forward. So it is time now to talk about the essential elements of an actual person-centered plan. So what I've done, I'm going to stop sharing and say hello to you again. So what I've done up until this point is gone real, kind of global in terms of the concept of being person-centered and what that means. The truth is, becoming a person-centered practitioner, a person-centered citizen, right, takes years and years of training, of reading. There is all sorts of wonderful mentors that I've had in my life in this journey of person-centered facilitating who have really driven home all of these concepts and helped me to understand the importance of this. So that's really important to me that I had that part of the conversation, it was incorporated into this workshop, because moving forward, if you ever decide to do person-centered planning with anyone or of any kind, because there are a few different types of approaches to person-centered planning, understanding the concept of circles of support, the concept of citizenry, the concepts that I'm about to continue to talk about that are incorporated in the planning process. Those help all of us when we get to the point of doing a person-centered plan, have a much better reference for why we do the things that we do in the planning process. So I hope that helps to broaden your thoughts, so that when we're now talking about the actual mechanics of doing a person-centered plan, you can appreciate and understand more about where a good facilitator is coming from when they bring up these elements of a person-centered plan. So, sorry, could you make the slides larger so the print is easier to see? Yes, of course, I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, I think this might do it. Hold on, and let's find out. Here we are. Share my screen. Okay. I hope that's better. So, essential elements of a person-centered plan. Let's see what else I have. Okay. So, a person-centered, now we're talking about, let's say you hired me to come in to do a person-centered plan, or somebody else to come in and do a person-centered plan. Doesn't have to be me. I'm happy to do it, love to do it, but I'm not here to sell myself. A good facilitator is going to be bringing the following elements into the conversation. First of all, a circle of support. This is not a meeting that's meant to be in an office where somebody else has invited you and they are a systems person, it's their office, it's your caseworker, whatever, and it's just you, maybe a spouse or significant other or somebody, and maybe the citizen themselves. That is not a person-centered plan. A person-centered plan involves the larger circle of support and the number of people who are there who have been invited, hopefully with a little bit of participation in the invitation list by the citizen themselves. Not always possible, I get it, but with that in mind. When I do person-centered planning, I have a meeting ahead of time, a couple of them where we talk about this. At any rate, when I do person-centered planning, I come and everybody else comes to a place where the family has decided they are most comfortable. But that said, I don't do them in homes, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. I have done them in homes, but I'll tell you the pros and cons to that in a second. At any rate, so we get to the space and we begin talking. Notice that in this list of essential elements of the person-centered plan, they go in order of kind of, to some extent, the most important parts of the conversation from start to finish. The dream and the gifts are always, no matter which of the tools, the several tools that we use in the planning process, we always start with the dream and the gifts. So let me talk a little bit about the dream. The dream is not necessarily the big giant, it is the big giant, big picture. Sorry about that. But the dream is just that. This is the one part of the process where we actually, I actually will say, if the citizen, whether they're in the room or not, if you, the citizen, could have anything in the world, anything at all, any life, anything you want, what would you want? Okay, and we talk about that. We start off with that for a couple of reasons. One, it's kind of fun to talk about, right? But two, it sets the tone and it sets the pace so that everyone understands that we're going to spend a little bit of time listening and hearing about the answer to that question. And we're not going to, as a facilitator, I set up some ground rules. We don't laugh, we don't dismiss, we don't correct. This is the time during that person-centered planning process where everyone is invited to simply listen. And by invited to listen, that means shut up. This is not your opinion. This is the actual, if this person could do anything or have anything in their life, what would it be? Okay, and we do that. Now, I'll address this in a minute, but for a person who has serious challenges around communication, who has severe intellectual disabilities, I do call upon the people who know them best to be their voice. And I coach them during the process about how to be their voice and so on and so forth. We talk about the dream. Let me give you an example of my favorite dream over all the years that I've been doing this. The very favorite one that I have is that one young man said, if I could do anything I wanted, he was able to grasp the concept and it was great. He said, I would live under the sea in a pineapple with SpongeBob SquarePants. And I loved it. And let me tell you what happened in this conversation. Didn't let anybody laugh, didn't let anybody interrupt, but I said, tell me more. And this young man went on to tell the group about how he loves SpongeBob SquarePants because he has, a roommate, and forgive me, I'm not a expert on this, and this was years ago, but he went on to describe SpongeBob's life. And because he was talking about this in the context of what he would want, we were able to learn by deeply listening to this young man that he loved the beach, he loved to swim in the ocean, he wanted to live with one other guy, but no more than that. He wanted to work in food service. He wanted to work like in a little restaurant, like the Krusty Krab or whatever that crab shack is that SpongeBob works at. And so he wanted to have a job, but he didn't want to wear a uniform. That was important. He was okay with an apron, but nothing other than that. He wanted to be able to greet people, and he wanted to have a couple of friends who he could goof around with, okay? That's what we learned by simply opening up the conversation to not possibility, impossibility, anything. I had one other young man who told me that he would live on the moon, and I think it was serve Astro hot dogs to astronauts as they went by. Okay. I love this part of the person-centered planning process because just so much comes out when the person is able to really think about it and process it. For when it's time for others to be their voice, sometimes because we're adults and we no longer have a whole lot of dreams, right? It's hard to pull that kind of stuff out, but we really talk about it. And as a facilitator, I ask certain questions that bring up things. I ask questions about, tell me a story about something that you think about an experience you had with a citizen and that was really fun. And by listening to those stories, I took him once to Six Flags and he could not get enough of the roller coaster. Okay. What have we just learned about this citizen? He loves high action stuff, right? The higher the better, the more exciting the better. We're already learning things about this person, about their dreams. It has nothing to do with what's wrong with them. It has nothing to do with their barriers or their challenges or anything. It's simply a human being talking about their dreams. From there, we go on to the gifts. And we talk about the gifts right after the dream by listing those things that we've learned about the person. And, as the facilitator, and I often have a co-facilitator with me, that the facilitator and I, who don't really necessarily know the person that well, have already been able to participate in this part of the conversation around the gifts because we've heard these cool stories. So I can glean from SpongeBob guy that he loves to make people happy. He loves to be around other people. Why? Because he wanted to work, right, in the Krusty Krab or whatever and so on. So I'm gleaning these gifts and other people in the circle who are listening going, yeah, you got it. That's exactly what my guy is like or my girl is like and so on. So we name the gifts and we spend a little time doing that. There are certain tools where we do some of this and certain where we don't. I'm going to share my screen again to remind you of the list. But sometimes we go into the nightmare. And for certain tools, that part of the discussion is really, really important for this reason. If we don't identify the nightmare, and by nightmare, we're simply talking about those things that are really important to make sure are avoided for a person, then we don't know when we stumble into those things. So let me give you some examples of what a nightmare might consist of. And we use this term, and it's a strong term, but it's meant to be that, okay? So some examples of items in a person's nightmare might be that it would be their nightmare to have a job where they don't get to be around other people. It might be their nightmare that they have a job where they do have to be around people, right? It might be a nightmare that they live with a whole lot of people. It might be their nightmare that they have to live alone. It might be their nightmare that they can't ever go to the beach or can't ever go skiing. Those are some of the examples of things that might come up in a person's nightmare, okay? And they can get very serious and they can get very dark, and that's okay. But again, sometimes when we don't know these things about a person, they happen and we don't even realize that it's important that these things be avoided. So that becomes part of the person-centered planning process conversation as well. From there, what we do is we go into, so we've already established all of these things about this citizen that we're talking about. And then we start moving into a conversation around positive and possible goals. And so this is where I want to illustrate that, a lot of times I've already gone through the first 45 minutes of this person-centered planner meeting, and we've talked about SpongeBob, right? And we've talked about all of these things, and we've talked about the gifts, and then we talked about the nightmare. And parents will go to me, at some point, are we going to talk reality? And I go, yes, we're going to talk about that right now. So we move toward creating positive and possible goals. But the beauty of this part of it is that we create positive and possible goals for a person's next few years of their life based on the dream and the gifts, not based on the system stuff, the appropriate possible agencies that there are in the DDS region, right? Within those agencies, the services that they may or may not have. So they have a farm, they have a nursery garden, and they have a recycling center. Pick one. And if you don't like them, don't worry, we'll write a behavior plan until you do like them, okay? So that's what happens in the absence of this conversation around the dream, the gifts, and the nightmare. Positive and possible goals become system-centered. So now we're creating positive and possible goals around the person and what they just told us about, and whatever else it is that people bring forward. So positive and possible goals for SpongeBob guy, they ended up being that, within 3 years, I don't remember his exact age, but he was in transitioning age. So within 3 years, he's going to have a job at a small restaurant or something, right? Within 3 years, he's going to, I think he was moving into a residential situation. I think he was looking at shared living. I don't know. But so we name these things. Now, I say this, and let me illustrate one other thing. When we make the positive and possible goals, we actually do this ridiculously stupid little thing that I made up in my head, where I go, all right, we're all going to jump into this little time machine and we're going to go forward 3 years. Now, person-centered plans are typically between 2 to 5 years from now. We don't go beyond that because we need to remain in the possible realm, right? And so we build upon that. So we're all going to jump in this time machine and we're going to go 3 years ahead. So here we are. Boom. We are now in May of 2023. What is in place? So we're not talking about the maybes or the possibilities. We're actually making it happen in this moment. Okay. So he is living in shared living. He is working at the Krusty Krab. And he does have a gym membership, and he's going to the gym twice a week. So we build that life and what it will look like 3 years from now, as if it's already happened. Okay, those are the positive and possible goals. Let me go back to the screen. We ground ourselves, and so we've developed all this. The remainder of the person-centered plan involves how we're going to get from now to those positive and possible goals 3 years from now. So the elements of that include grounding in the now. And we do that so that when we my hope and dream is that if it's a 3-year plan, you guys are going to have this on a giant piece of paper on your wall for the next 3 years. And this is going to be your roadmap that you're going to be following, right? And so the idea is that if we have to make sure we ground ourselves in the now, so that over the next 3 years, we're reminding ourselves of where we began, and we can keep our perspective about how far we've come. So we ground ourselves in the now. We talk about the people to enroll. By enrolling, I mean getting involved in this person-centered planning process now and sustainably for the next few years. That's the circle of support that I've already talked about. We talk about building strength, and building strength in the areas of knowledge, skill sets, in the areas of associations, building that community, in the areas of system supports, really important now, right, in this process. And we talk about building strength in terms of personal health and wellness, because doing this, going through the next 3 years and honoring and following this person-centered plan is going to take a lot of strength. It's going to take a lot of strength on everyone's part. So we talk about those elements and what it's going to take to make this happen. We talk about the important 2s and the important 4s. We make that distinction. And then the last part of a person-centered plan is always action items. And in that piece, we talk about who is going to do what, by when, to get the ball rolling. Now I say this when I facilitate, at this point, it's time to talk about action items. We could not talk about action items and just roll this person-centered plan up into a role hand it off to you and go, boy, that was fun. That was a great 3 hours, and the donuts were good. So awesome. Thank you for having me. That's not the point. The point is to get the ball rolling. So let me go back to talking about this in the context of SpongeBob SquarePants guy. Okay, so with regard to the idea of people to enroll, SpongeBob SquarePants guy needed to have he was transitioning into the adult system. So he needed, let's call him David. So I stopped calling him SpongeBob SquarePants guy. I don't know if that was his real name. I'd have to look back, but we're going to go with David. So David needed to have in his life a job coach. He needed to have in his life the people that are in his life already. They needed to stick around for the most part. He needed somebody who knew of a restaurant that might be hiring, right? Maybe that's within MRC, or maybe that's just somebody who happens to have a connection. He needed to have, let me think, he needed to have an adult behavioral person to help him work on the skills that he needed. So under building strength, he needed to work on skill sets like reciprocative conversation, right? Reciprocal conversation, asking a question, getting an answer, acting on it, asking another question, getting an answer. He needed to work on, some basics of cooking. He needed to work on some basics of kitchen safety. He needed to work on being able to tolerate some sort of a uniform. Maybe that would, a red shirt and khakis, some safety shoes and an apron. He needed to work on independently working, right? Task completion. He needed to work on maybe getting some muscle mass on him, because he's going to be, carting food and dishes and so on back and forth. He needed to work on, so maybe between now and then he could get an internship somewhere working with someone, or simply start finding some people in the area who might be willing to have him over to their house while he assists with cooking dinner once a week. He needed to work on, maybe taking an online class, or getting a certification. What is that? serve safe, whatever certification that you need sometimes. So maybe that was part of his building strength kind of strategy. And then the action items became things like, example I just used, is there anyone in the circle of support, either here or that we know of, that we could ask, who might be willing to say, you know what, I'd be happy to have David over to my house a couple times a month, and he and I will work on basics of cooking. I'd be happy to have David, I would be happy to research Serve Safe certification classes coming up in the next 6 months and hand that off to you, mom or dad, to get them enrolled. I would be happy to, maybe somebody at the school system would say, you know what, I'm going to set up a meeting in the next 2 weeks with mom and dad and David, and we're going to take a second look at the IEP and see if maybe we can add some skill building goals to work on these specifics. And that's another thing that I love about person-centered planning. I said it in the very beginning, and I'll say it again. These person-centered plans really, really help to support the creation of an IEP or an ISP that hones in and focuses on the real anticipated future situations and experiences that this person hopes to have. And so in the absence of a person-centered plan, or in the absence of applying person-centered principles to the plan, what happens is we all pull down off the shelf, or the professionals pull down off the shelf kind of these transition curriculums
these little guides to transition that they just kind of slap and apply to everybody, right? And there are things like money, you know, budgeting, and which is important. There are things like money exchange. There are things like, well, we all know what they are. I'm not a big expert on that. I'm a little old on this, but I remember a couple of examples to illustrate again, in the absence of being person-centered in our approaches, what can happen. My son Nicky is unable to read and does not understand at all the concept of the value of money. Okay, that it just doesn't, it's meaningless to him. What happened was, going back, I could kick my younger version of myself, but that's okay. What happened was they put into his IEP for I don't know how many years that he needed to learn, you know, the concept of money so that he could make a basic purchase. Okay, so this went on and on and on and on, and they tried every approach to get him to understand the concept of money. Never happened, right? But what I ended up saying toward the end, finally, we scratched that from his IEP. And when we got to the ISBs, I never allowed it to be brought up. And I got a lot of pushback from that, from the team, because it's part of the transition curriculum, right? That they have to be able to make a purchase. For my son, making a purchase makes him more of a victim, okay? For a couple reasons. One, he could be taught certainly to pull out a bill from his wallet and hand it over to somebody for an item that he wants, but that could be $100 bill for a $1 item, and that person could easily give him back a quarter, and Nicky would never understand the difference, right? So now he's got financial victimization going on. The other thing that can happen is my son is very, very aggressive when he's very, very anxious. So he has, if we make it so that he has to hand something over to somebody and he's in an anxious state, he's just as likely to start handing over the bill, grab the person's hand, and bite down on it. So now we've got a forensic issue because the police have been called and my son's been arrested for attacking the girl behind the counter, right? When the truth is, the bottom line is, nobody has paid any attention to the fact that the value of money is not something that Nicky can learn, is interested in learning, right? So let's take that off the table, shall we? The other example is in a very similar vein. For my son, signing his name. Again, can we not do that, please? Because that sets him up to be more of a victim than it does an empowered citizen, okay? He's always going to need help in certain areas. So we need to get past being stuck on these transition curriculum items and think person-centered. Let's make these last couple of years of educational entitlement really, really functional, pertaining to a known future that is person-centered, that speaks to the gifts, the dreams, the contributions that Nicky can make to his community. They just don't happen to include making purchases, okay? So we have to get to this place, steward his humanity, and talk real talk, right, about Nicky. Again, not all of this applies to every single person. If you want your person to be able to safely make a purchase, then that is important, and let's do that. But for a person, for example, and this is also being person-centered, if the highest version of that speaks to their desire to feel like they are in control of their finances and speaks to their desire to look like everybody else by making their own purchases, if that's important to the person, but they still could be vulnerable with regard to making that purchase, how can we get to the safest version of that? Is it a debit card? Is it one of those cards that's prepaid with only 20 bucks on it, but it still looks like and feels like a credit card, just like everyone else is using? Why is that not, if that's the maximum that he can get to, and he or she is going to feel great about that, that's where we're going to go. That's being person-centered. That is building a person's and stewarding a person's humanity and honoring those things that are important to them. but also stewarding the things that are important for them. So that's what person-centered planning does and can do and serves to do. I am now really parched, so I'm going to take a quick drink and I'm going to check and see if there are any questions other than making the slides larger. I hope that worked, even though now I'm just talking to you. Anyway, now if you guys are not sure how to use the chat thing and you have a question and you have your video on, you're welcome to wave like this because we'll see you, and I will call in, or Donna will see you as well. Okay, and with that, let me go back to sharing my screen. Hello, if I can. Okay, there we go. You know, I'm married to this techie engineering guy. I love him very much. But what he has done is he has given me 2 damn monitors for this thing. One where I'm controlling, and put my mouse so that it like moves from one monitor to the other. And he's all like, woo, this is awesome. This is the way you should be doing this, Cheryl. And I disagree. Got it. Okay, going back to the slide over here. Jeez, I'm gonna kill him. All right, so those are the essential elements of a person-centered plan. If these elements do not exist and all of these elements that I've talked about this entire evening, if these elements do not exist, I'm sorry to say, and this is gonna sound a little bitchy, they're not doing person-centered planning, okay? If you're hearing from someone that our IEP or our ISP is person-centered, so that should be good enough, not so. Absolutely not. That doesn't mean that the person doesn't have a little bit of an idea of, you know, person-centered approaches and things like that. But I am still learning years and years after starting this, and I got my training up for many, many days, over many weeks, over the past several years, over and over again in Canada. I'm doing this person-centered planning thing. You cannot learn how to do this with one half-day workshop. I just want to drive that home. So pardon me, but that's the case. Who needs a person-centered plan? Well, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, everybody needs a person-centered plan. But let's talk about typically the people who are going to most benefit from a person-centered plan fall into one of a couple categories. One are those people that are expecting a transition in the future, the next 2 to 5 years. And I have done them for people who say, my kid's turning 22 in 6 weeks, can we do a person-centered plan? Yes, but let's try to do it a little bit earlier than that. And examples of that are transitioning out of school or supported environments, changing home or employment situation, even marriages, divorces, aging into supported living. And I add things like marriage and divorce to this list because over the years I've done this so many times that some point during the discussion, somebody just goes, I need one of these things for myself because I could have used this when I was getting a divorce, or I could have used this when I was buying a house. Another really cool application for these things are folks who are people like in my age category, and I'm living this right now, who are preparing to possibly think about the next step in care for their elderly adult parents, right? Imagine if you've got 3, 4, 5 siblings and the conversation comes up, what can we do to help mom and dad through the rest of their lives? And you've got 3, 4, 5, you know, people with individual opinions. And then it becomes, well, you know, that's not fair, or you're going to do all the work, I'm going to do all the work, and blah, 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 blah. Being person-centered about this approach and applying these principles of person-centered planning can really help facilitate a healthy conversation that, again, does just what it should, honors first and foremost the citizens that mom and dad are, their dreams and wishes, the things that they want in their lives. So this can really be
Question?
Yes.
Question in the chat box, Cheryl.
Yes. I don't see it. So can you read it?
Cheryl,
I can say the question. I wrote the question. You were talking about a transition, and I was just wondering if going into middle school would count as a transition of this kind of caliber, or should person-centered planning be kind of waiting until 16 or 17, et cetera? So,
That's a really good question. And my answer has changed over the last several years. It used to be that I would say, you know, that middle school age is a tough one to do kind of a future plan for. But since I started being called out to California to do those plans out there, I did end up getting a lot of clients in that age category. And I've changed my mind about that dramatically. The person-centered plan for a person in that age group really ends up focusing in on being prepared, that student being prepared for the developmental milestones that are going to start to really expand the gap socially and academically for that person. So helping a person become the very best version of themselves as they go through the god-awful hormonal changes, right? And helping them understand things like all of those social, really difficult social things that start to happen, the difficulties that frankly every one of us goes through at that age anyway. But you know, learning those key skills like reciprocal conversation, like you know, sometimes it'll be necessary to really hone in on toileting, right? On sexuality, on just, you know, taking a look at, so what I do is I say, okay, let's take a look at the challenges and the skill sets that are the expectation for all children at that age. How do we get to the best version of that for this person that we can? Because, you know, the next several years, even though there's not a huge transition, if you ask a kid in middle school, going into high school is a huge transition, right? So we can't negate that. So yeah, I find value in that at that age. Any other questions? Okay. What else? Let me go back to the screen again. Okay. What I do here in these last few slides, I try to hone in on those questions that I get over and over again each time. How do people with disabilities participate? This is always a big question, and it always comes up. You know, I have a person who can't speak, you know, will probably not sit there for 3 hours because my meetings are 3 hours long, okay? There's no way they'll sit there. There's no way they're going to be able to tell you what their dream is. Or their dream is to simply, you know, swing all day long. Okay, so I'll get that. Okay, so here's the thing with regard to participation. I touched on it a little bit earlier with regard to when a person, when we are the ones as the circle of support who really need to be the voice of a person who has challenges communicating or social challenges or whatever, and the concept of being in a room being talked about for 3 hours is horrifying for them. Okay, then as a facilitator, part of my training involves bringing forward that voice in a way that makes certain to Steward the fact that I want you to tell me the answers to these questions as if you were that person, if you were David himself, okay? I don't want, if I'm gonna ask you, I'm not gonna ask you, what do you think David's dream is? Instead, I'm gonna ask you, think of a time when you saw David at his very best, when he was happiest, when he was the most calm and comfortable, where he was laughing or something like that. Just tell me the story, because that's gonna help be the voice. You're going to be stewarding the voice on behalf of David, because David was communicating in that story that he was happy. So let's talk about the elements of that story. Where was he? What was he doing? Who was he with? Now we're gleaning, those things. And I've talked about this already using examples. That's David's voice. Okay. That's his voice. And that's how we help be the voice of people. Also going back to the element, driving home another reason why that element of circle of support is important. And this is one of the reasons, because I do a whole other workshop strictly on circles of support. And when I do that workshop, I bring up this slide about myself. And I'm not going to be able to bring it up because I'll be like, tick, 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 and I'll be screaming and my husband to help me. So I'm not going to do that. So let me just describe it to you. There's a table on this slide, and it says Cheryl, right? Cheryl Chan. And on this table, in one column, it is the people that are in my life. On another column, it's what they know about me. Okay? So think of this in terms of yourself. And I use myself as an example as a non-disabled person to illustrate this. Well, I have some special needs, but they involve wine. Anyway, so the concept on this table is the people who know, oh, good, thank you, sir. Cheers. The people who know me best, first row is my family, okay? And what they know about me are things like I'm really early, I get up early and I go to bed early. I speak Japanese, not very well anymore, but I speak Japanese. I love to travel, and I'm gluten-free and dairy-free, and I have a history of GI disease. Okay, that's what my family knows about. I think the second row is my people in my church, okay? And what they know about me is that I'm a Christian, that I hate to teach, because I've been asked over and over again to teach in the classes, and I'm like, nope, not gonna do it, I hate to teach. I love to sing. I love to sing in the choir. And I love loud concerts. No, that's my other friends. Sorry, so that's my church friends, okay? The next row is my gym friends, because I'm a bit of a gym rat, okay? And what they know about me is X, Y, and Z. And one of the things that I illustrate in this is that I don't like loud music and I don't like group classes, okay? The last column, or the last row, is called GGA. That stands for Girls Gone Amok. Me and 3 of my closest friends go on vacation twice a year together, a real short one, but it is amok, okay? And when we go, what happens there stays there. But what they know about me is that I love rock concerts, and I love rum and coke, and I love late nights, okay? So I bring up this table, and I use this to illustrate the fact that if any one single group of people was invited to my person-centered plan, the only thing that would come up are those things that they know about me. They would be missing all of these other things about me that they don't know because they only belong in this part of my life, okay? So what you're gonna see, there's a couple of things that don't jive if you look at my whole screen, because my GGA friends know that I love live concerts, rock concerts, but my church friends know that I don't like loud music. So what is that all about? Well, if you get them all in the same room, they might come up with the idea that, okay, I like them in certain situations. That was my gym friends, actually. My gym friends, but that is in the context of going into spin classes. I hate the loud music in a spin class. It just drives me up a wall. But I'll go to any rock concert and just have a great time. But if only one of those groups was in there, it might be listed in my nightmare that I don't like loud music. And never again will I be able to attend a rock concert because everybody will think that I don't like loud music. Okay? So the concept of having other people from different parts of a person's life be drawn into this conversation, especially when a person has difficulty communicating, means that we're hitting on those areas that may be less global and only known to a few people, but they're really important to stewarding the humanity and talking about who the person is, okay? So how do people with disabilities participate in all sorts of ways? But I'll tell you over and over again, what I find really fascinating is that I hear, and this has literally happened hundreds of times for me, I hear, my kid will never sit in a 3-hour meeting with you. He will sit for maybe 4 minutes and then he is going to leave. And I'm telling you, they don't. And this is why, that I believe, this is my belief. Too often we suggest that a person that can't communicate also can't be aware of their surroundings. They know when we're talking about them, and they know when we're talking smack about them, and they know when we're talking lovingly about them, and they know when we're empowering them and we're boosting them and we're talking about how great they are and their gifts, and they stay. And over again, I have seen nothing short of a miracle of a person who would never sit otherwise staying for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and just having this look on their face like, wow, they're talking about me, and they're respecting me, and they're honoring me, and they love me. And the feeling is there, the experience is there. Not all the time. There are also ones who are like, the pork rinds are gone, so am I. And so that happens too, and that's okay. We just move on. But either way, it's a great thing. And there are ways for people to participate regardless of their ability. Let me go back to my slides. Let me see what else I have here. So in conclusion, I'll go into a little bit more. I have a little bit of time, so then it's not quite in conclusion yet, but at any rate, being person-centered means creating a space that works for the person while everyone else has to adapt. And that's really what it's all about. And let me explain to you how a plan meeting looks, because this is also a little bit different, no, a lot different from a typical meeting that you would expect. And this is the way I do things. Part of it is my training, but also is my adaptation over the years of doing this. First of all, the physical space. We set up the physical space in a semicircle. I eliminate tables at my person-centered plans, because then everybody creates their own little desktop with their own little workspace and their own little paper and pen and so on and so forth. And it looks like a meeting, okay? And it's not. It's a person-centered plan. So I eliminate, we sit in a semicircle, everybody's sitting in chairs, and we're all able to see each other and look at each other. There's no head of the table, end of the table, and so on and so forth. So that's the way it looks. Everybody is, I stand up with my co-facilitator in front of a wall, and there's a giant piece of paper attached to the wall. And my co-facilitator is the graphics person who takes all the notes and so on and so forth. And we use color and we use imagery. They do drawings and so on. And that's the whole meeting is like that. Now, there's a few reasons for that, and this speaks to the physical space in general. There's a few reasons to that. One is, like I alluded to, we do not want to create a situation where it feels like a typical meeting, okay? Because now we're just simply swallowing the pill of this is a meeting and it's less human, okay? We're talking about someone. Again, we don't want to create a hierarchy, because guess what? In my person-centered plans, there's one person in charge, and that is the person we're talking about, the citizen, okay? No matter what that feels or looks like. So that's the physical space. Again, I don't typically do them in homes, because unless it's not the home of the host, the parents or the citizen, because as soon as that happens, you are hosting in your house, your phone is ringing, your dog is barking, you're worried about food, you're worried about all of these things, and I really want you to be there now and not have those other things to worry about. Ground rules is another part of what a plan meeting looks like. I introduce, as the facilitator, I have no skin in the game, so I am going to set up some ground rules, and I don't care who you are, speaking of which. So the ground rule, among the ground rules are no note taking, because this is a private meeting and I want everybody attending and listening deeply, and notes are being done by my co-facilitator, okay? So everybody's without notes. no sidebar conversations. There's a few other things, you know, we're going to respect each other in the process and all of that. But one of the other things that I talk about is the invitation to do two things. And one is to listen deeply. In other words, be quiet and don't say anything, or participate with intention, which means keep the conversation to what we're talking about in that moment. And I will, you know, redirect us if we need to. So those are the ground rules. And again, there's one person in charge and we will steward that. In addition, let's see, the physical space, I'm starting to lose my thought process, but that's what a person-centered planning meeting looks like. What else? Ground rules, hold on. There was one more thing and I will either think of it or not, doesn't matter. Question in chat, is that for now or is that for earlier? Is there another question?
Yes, there's
Okay.
another question. It was around trainers in different languages.
Mm-hmm. By trainers, are there trainers such as yourself that are bilingual? Okay. So right now in the state of Massachusetts, to my knowledge, I'm the only one who is independently operating as a person-centered planning facilitator. There are other people who are doing similar things to what I'm doing, who are working for specific agencies or family support centers, and I don't know specifically who they are. So I'm the only one that like I said, that I know of so far who is just, can be, you know, is available for hire, right? I have done them for different people with different languages. Typically, you know, I just kind of find someone in advance, typically within the invitation list, who might be able to help with translation. I haven't stumbled upon the situation where I've had to really strive to find a translator. But in terms of actually doing a person-centered plan with a translator, yes, that's been done. I've done it out in California a number of times with the Chinese community, with Vietnamese community, and one who I think spoke Portuguese. So that's the extent of my experience with that. Any other questions right now? Let me just look ahead and see what my okay. So the last part of this presentation, which by the way will be on my website. It's on my website now, but I will repost it, and so that you will know that it's the one that you attended by naming it tonight's date and location. So applying, the last thing that I usually talk about is really something, by the time I get to this, I've already kind of covered it, but applying a person-centered plan to a systems plan, I'll just share with you this. Whoops. Presenting the plan report to the team in advance allows the team to come prepared to consider ways that what is discovered through the plan can inform goals and benchmarks. I did talk about that. And because a person-centered plan creates a vision based on the future that is either anticipated or desired, the actual future environment is identified, and therefore goals are more reflective of the real future, as opposed to off-the-shelf transition curriculum that are too generic. The dream piece of the plan can become the parent vision and be presented in the voice of the focus person or citizen. This drives home to the readers that the vision is based on the person's own voice. And finally, along the same lines, individuals, here's what's happening right now. Individuals and families are bringing their plans to the table and using them to inform goals. School teams are participating and finding the plans very helpful in their decision-making process by having clear pictures of the person's identity, goals, natural supports, and life outside of school hours. They can make more informed decisions and strengthen outcomes that apply to their environments. DDS folks and other systems folks, school teams, and so on are participating. after a recent plan was complete, the DDS representative said, I don't understand why this isn't being done right now for every student in transition. And I really mean that. That is not a reflection of me or anything that I'm bringing to the table. That is a reflection on the power, the sheer power of being person-centered in our approach to planning for a person's future. It really is that powerful. DDS comes to these meetings all the time. School teams come to these meetings all the time, and they absolutely love it. Frankly, it makes their jobs a little easier because they can, instead of just throwing spaghetti at the wall, to think about what might work and what might not, they're actually coming together with a real good, it doesn't have to be solid, it doesn't have to be exact, but a much better picture of the possibility and the future that they're likely to be looking at. So, again, skill building becomes much more focused, and people are finding that they're much better prepared for whatever that transition may be in the future, vis-a-vis their person-centered plan. So that is it for me. My voice is almost gone, which is very typical. It's 7:45. I appreciate all of the time that you guys have spent with me. I welcome questions. I will, my website is personcenteredplanning.com, and you can contact me through my website. You can also find me on Facebook. My full name, including my middle name, Cheryl Ryan Chan. I'm the only one on Facebook with that name, so I'm easy to find. And I do a lot of things. I also have a Facebook page called Being Person Centered with Cheryl Ryan Chan. That's another page to find very easily. It's also, this stuff is also at the end of the slide presentation. So yeah.
And there's a couple more questions in the chat box.
Mhm.
Do you want me to read them, or do you want to just kind of glance at them?
Let's see what we got. What about the tools from Charting the Life course? So I know what Charting the Life course is. They actually look and mimic a lot of something that I do know a lot about called person-centered thinking tools. And that is very different from person-centered planning, only because of some of the ways that the approach is done. So Charting the Life course is a wonderful set of tools. It typically does not include the larger circle of support. It typically does not necessarily create a roadmap that has a timeline to it that really puts in action items and turns the pieces of the chart into an actionable, movable, action-oriented plan. So it's very different. I love the Charting the Life course tools. And so there's some differences. I personally find person-centered planning just a better quality, but that's just me, right? Okay, but I do like the Charting the Life course tools very, very much. I think for me, if I were to be talking about the Charting the Life course tools, I would just say, as much as you possibly can, call upon the opinions of others before you decide that this is complete. Get other stories, get other ideas. Remember back to that slide that I have that I don't show you, that I describe about me, myself, and those different people in my life. And if mom and dad are the only people who are answering these questions, or the individual themselves are the only people that are answering these questions, you're only getting a small part of the picture. Okay, so that to me is a takeaway for any of these person-centered thinking or Charting the Life course tools. I hope that answers their question. Oh, thank you, Nancy. It's very nice. A rock star. Well, I like rock concerts, so I'll take that as a compliment. So I'm scared to ask, but how much is this? Okay, well, I'm scared to tell you. but I'll do it anyway. So let me explain to you what goes along with my services. The price right now is $1,200, okay? I am absolutely happy to work with people who cannot make that happen. I am not in this for the money, okay? But I do need to get my expenses back. I do need to make it worth the time that I spend away from my own family, okay? So that's what that price is based on. When you hire me for that $1,200, I am with you for about 4 meetings over the course of 7 to 10 weeks. And at the end of the person-centered plan, you get a report from me that is anywhere from 15 to 25 pages long that goes through every single word that was discussed during the person-centered plan meeting. And it lists additional recommendations for how to take this to the next level and drill down into things like everything from, an invection of, for a kid who wants to learn how to cook, an invection oven might work. Here are some resources for stove safety. Here are some recommendations for how to incorporate that circle of support into I go on and on and on, to the point where I'm like, okay, I've said enough. And people are like, you sent me this much. Yes, I did. So that's what you get from me with my person-centered plan. And then I come back and visit you, if you want me back, about 4 to 6 weeks after the person-centered plan. And we go over those action items and say, how are you doing? Are things working? For those things that aren't working, why not? Do we need to tweak them? For those things that you've already completed under action items, that is awesome, but how do we keep that ball rolling? Let's not lose that momentum. And I help you get set up for that. And then I'm done. So that's what it is. But again, I am fully appreciative of the fact that there is money involved in this, and that is a very tight commodity for a lot of families. And to the best that I can, I will always make this work for you. So please know that.
So there is one more question, Cheryl. It's actually a comment, and you may have addressed this. I'm not sure if Phyllis thinks that you have addressed it, but it was from Phyllis and Scully
Okay.
around her son. And it's kind of up, the time that it was typed was 7:44.
Okay, he has a question. Lots of pieces of this have been done and are in place, so he wants to know where to go from here. Okay, excellent. Hi, Scully. Thanks for participating. I can see you too. Hi. So where do you go from here? So lots of pieces of this have been done or in place, so you want to know where to go from here. You know what, Scully? I love that a lot of these pieces are in place. I think maybe, and I don't know you, so maybe talking about first, I would ask you questions about who are the people in your life, and can you count on them? Do you have a circle of support? Do you need a larger circle of support? What are the things, even though some pieces are already in place, what's not in place? And let's talk about those. And then maybe somehow we can together take all of those pieces and put it into an order that makes a lot of sense and gets you from step to the next step to the next step, so that you have an actual plan rather than just answers to questions about who you are. I hope that helps, Scully. Yeah?
So
Good.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is helpful, and I am I'm glad there's a way to build off what I have.
Good. I'm glad too. And Scully, if you'd like to, you could certainly reach out to me, and I would just sit down with you and just have a conversation with, in any way that you want, with just, not to sound whatever, but with no concept of charging or anything like that. I would be happy to sit down with Scully and just have that conversation and help him think about how, piecing this together to make something that works for you, Scully. So anytime, okay?
Okay.
I'm glad I could be a little bit of help right now.
So fortunately, those key points you mentioned, the flow didn't work right to write them all down.
Well, this is being recorded, so everybody's going to get a link to this recording, so you can watch this as many times as you'd like.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then there was another question. My son taking guardianship, we chatted about this long ago, and I'm doing it, is 6, and it seems like this is a great thing to have in the back of my mind to keep up with. And anytime you want to tell me what you would have done differently, my boy is very much like yours. All right, Tanya, I'm in. We got it. I get it. And, our journey is one that's, every journey is unique, right? But I have met a number of people, and this doesn't apply to everybody here, but I've met a number of people through my journey who have connected with the story that I tell with regard to a severely impacted child who has lifelong challenges. And Nikki's story is a very, very, very difficult and long one. And so I believe in the power of connecting, and the power of sharing, and the power of being able to find people who do get it regardless. So yeah, anytime you want to reach out to me, I love it. Just buy me coffee, okay? That's all I ask.
You got it. Thanks.
So Cheryl, I want to jump in. This is Donna from Family Empowerment, and I just wanted to jump in here just to remind people that there was a lottery for, we're funding 4 of the 3 sessions with Cheryl. Our Family Support Center is going to be funding 4 of those, and people were asked the question if they were ready to start when you registered. So we will be taking the people's names. First, I will be contacting each one of you to make sure that I understand your role in the person's life. And then once we figure that out, we'll put your name in a lottery. We'll pick out 4 people who will be funded to actually begin a person-centered plan with Cheryl. The key to this particular situation is that you need to be ready to have your first session with Cheryl. She wants to connect with you by May 20th for the first session. So this is kind of a fiscal year thing. We need people to have their first session by June 30th. So this is kind of a time crunch type of situation, but we will be in touch with those people who did answer yes. If there are other people who, after listening to the presentation, want to throw their name into that lottery, please get in touch with me through email. Oh.
So if I could just clarify, when we say first session, if you go to my website, you would see under services that my session contains 4 separate meetings. By the first session, what we're talking about is because we're in a virtual world right now, I'm going to combine what would typically be the first 2 sessions. So if you look at my website and you see intake call and then step 1, the pre-meeting, we would complete that as a singular meeting by May 20th. So that'll be done virtually, and I will do it anytime that works for you. First thing in the morning, middle of the night, it doesn't matter. I'm always around. So we'll make that work for you guys. And you can expect that it'll take about an hour and a half, and that it'll be done virtually. So.
Okay.
Anything else? Are there any other questions? Great.
Just a comment. It
Oh.
was awesome. So thank you.
Thank you. It was fun. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry. Leilani asked one other question. Doesn't family support pay for at least a portion? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So if you have family support dollars, and a lot of people do that you haven't used necessarily, and right now that's probably very rare, that you haven't used by the end of the fiscal year, yes, you can use it for that. But even if you do have money that might cover some of this, then absolutely that is being done across the state. People are using family supports dollars for a person-centered plan. Yeah. Yes. All right.
Hold on. I got a question.
Yes.
Okay, so what about the individuals for DDS that fall under the new guidelines of autism only? I think these would be awesome, and some of those young adults are graduating, with a high school diploma at 18. And you do them across the state, correct?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
I come to you. Yep.
All right.
They would be great for the people that are autism only.
Excellent.
Almost.
Because I think also through family support.
Yeah.
So for those individuals under autism only, maybe their funding can go towards this.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's a great idea. I mean, I think it's a great idea. Yeah, I think it's a very good application, especially because a lot of people who fall into that category are not necessarily going to receive the level of supports that they really truly need, right? Because that's such a catchy kind of thing, because people with autism only who don't have intellectual disabilities aren't going to get the set of supports that we still need to be fighting for, because the functionality of their skill sets may cause them to fail where supports and a solid person-centered plan that builds on really, really essential skills for living, as independently as possible will really need to be talked about. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I just want to mention one other thing. So if somebody is in adult services and they choose self-direction, their self-direction funds can also fund something like this.
Mhm.
So even as an adult, there is possibilities of getting funding and being creative in your funding sources to fund a person-centered plan. So work with all the people you know.
Yes, indeed. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful night. And
Thank you so much.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yes, take
Thank
care.
you.
See you soon. Stay
Thank you,
safe and
Cheryl.
healthy. You're welcome.
You too.
All right.
Nice to see you, Scully.
Bye, guys.